Hello and welcome to Aussie Crafter Solution the shit. But we're not talking to a distiller. Sorry, just point. We've got something better. Someone who actually knows about alcohol.
Ouch. Now you're going to get
And
us all in trouble.
all the viewers drop. I'm Luke. You'll notice that I don't look like Crafty because I'm not. He's not here. I don't know. He's got something better to do. So it's just going to be Todd and I. Hi, Todd.
Hi, Luke.
Chatting away to Lindsay from Gin Lane and the Craft Booze Market. How you doing, mate?
Very well. Thanks for having me on here.
Not a problem. Always like talking to you just for the fact that you're such a passionate drinker, as am I. But you actually sometimes seem to know what you're talking about. So I guess,
or at least pretend to and make it sound convincing. That's the real
you are
secret.
pretty good at just faking it till you make it. I think before we get into who you are and why and what and how, Todd, what's in your glass?
Yes. So my glass, well, since we're hopefully talking all things gin, I'm going to do a little bit of Little Juniper from our last podcast. I'm really enjoying this. It's fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I'm also. And yeah, we didn't collaborate on this at all, but I'm also drinking a Little Juniper, and I was so impressed and interested to talk to Stuart about it last week. Was it last week?
Week before.
Week before.
So 2 weeks ago.
Where it's all vacuum distilled and very scientific process behind it. I thought that was really quite interesting, and I had to get a bottle. So, Lindsay, what's in your glass?
So to begin with, I took the opportunity to head into the back catalogue, way back to the early days of Gin Lane for me, and unfortunately from a distillery that no longer exists in its correct form, if you ask me, Ironbark Distillery's Wattle Seed. So Reg made two of the best gins in the country at Ironbark during that period, and just as a sipping gin, which I like to enjoy, this Wattle Seed is outstanding. Wattle Seed used in a lot of different Australian gins as a botanical, but not often is it kind of the hero botanical, and this one is. So it's these beautiful chocolatey, nutty, savoury flavours, and it makes it an outstanding sipper. So Reg can thank me later when he obviously watches and hears this podcast.
I'm sure he will be watching, of course.
Not much of this left, of course, though. It's been holding on to that for some time.
There you go. Mel says hi.
Hey, Mel.
So, Lindsay.
Yes.
Who are you? What Gin Lane? What is Gin Lane? Let's start there.
So Gin Lane's a craft Australian gin subscription. We launched Gin Lane back in late 2015. So I believe we're in about our 7th year this year. And every month we select a different craft Australian gin as our gin of the month and send that out to our members on a subscription basis. So the cool thing is we've been around just about the longest, I think, of the craft gin subscriptions. We've got some very successful competition nowadays, which is great. Really kind of, just continuing to grow the Australian scene. But, I think when we started, there was about maybe 30 gins being made in Australia.
Right.
It was probably under the 20 distilleries mark. Four Pillars were early days. Archie Rose was our very first gin, and they had only just launched, I think, a month before us. So that kind of gives you a sense of the timeline, because, Archie and Four Pillars would both be kind of considered two of the established players, not just here, but almost globally now. But they were very new at the time, and we've kind of grown through that period with the growth of the industry as well. So well over 500 gins. No, if anybody tells you they've got the answer to how many gins are being made in Australia, they're bold-faced lying to you now. You just can't keep up. It's had huge growth, which is awesome.
Well, there does seem to be a new gin being launched every day, and in talking with some industry contacts over the last few days, I think I've heard of at least another dozen being released within the next month.
Yep.
Are we hitting?
Sorry, God.
Are we hitting saturation point of gin, or do you think we'll just keep going?
Honestly, I wouldn't have. I would not have thought. Here we go. Someone is saying closer to 800 than that I believe. I don't see how we have, simply based on the number of new distilleries, and I think what you've got is the real growth is, it's a combined thing. It's both growth in distilleries, but then I would say distilleries now are typically introducing far more gins in their lineup than was happening in sort of the earlier days. If I think back, Archie took quite a while to release their full range of gins. It was over the course of a number of years. But I think they had their traditional dry and then the distiller strength, which was their core lineup for a good period of time. In that same period of time now, a lot of the craft distilleries are successfully releasing 4, 5, 6 different gins. And so it's that kind of exponential growth. It is the growth in the distilleries themselves, but also just the sheer number of gins that they're actually bringing out, and the variety is staggering, actually. So I don't think we're reaching saturation yet. I think those of us who are close to it sometimes feel like that has to be the case, because you just can't see how it can keep growing. But it is, and it's still a passion for a lot of people. And the government's at least taken some steps recently to make the barrier to entry a little bit lower, which I think is just going to keep having that happen. That said, I think at some point there probably has to be some consolidation, as typically happens in most craft industries.
Yeah, right. So just thinking about your growth over the last 7 years, and then looking a little, narrowing that time frame down to the last 2 years.
Yep.
Or let's say 3 years, but the COVID years. How have you seen a increase in subscriptions and an increase in demand, or have you seen sort of a trailing off and then coming back? What's been your experience with COVID?
I think we rode the same wave that a lot of people did. COVID was a horrible thing, but also a novelty to a lot of people. This being locked down for 3 months at a time, having to stay at home, having your whole life upended, meant that some people just, I think a lot of us didn't quite know how to handle it and what to do with it. Suddenly people had more time on their hands. They didn't have to be fronting up to an office. They didn't have to do the commute. And, that for better or worse, certainly allowed for more drinking time. And I think we saw that in the first year particularly. And then we saw a pretty dramatic drop in the second year. Probably not quite the level of the increase that happened in the first year, but people being more serious about what health implications that had, and the uncertainty in the business environment. People went from, there was some government money to see them through those first periods, to, I think, maybe a belief, rightly, as it turned out, that couldn't last forever. And that the tap would have to be turned off at some point, and people started to get a little bit more careful about their money. And with the best will in the world, what we're selling is a premium product. The craft industry always is. It's premium in quality, I think, and it's also premium in price. So, are there perfectly decent gins out there that cost, $20 to $30 less a bottle? sure, there are, there's gins that have been around for a long time that everybody likes to bag out, and we all do. But they've been around for over 100 years in a lot of cases for a reason. They are
hundreds,
good.
according to my little blue book here.
Yeah.
Some of them are quite old. Just on the why I ask about your COVID experience. So a little tidbit that I found on page 106 is in the 10-week. So this is obviously UK focused.
Sure.
In the 10-week lockdown period of March to June 2020, UK gin sales increased by 42.5%. So during the lockdown, they reckon that there was about 1.3 billion litres of alcohol drunk during that lockdown. Not just gin, but alcohol in general.
Sure.
I mean,
and bearing in mind that's from a pretty high base in the UK too. Gin is. I think it came out for maybe 2 years or something out of the shopping basket index in the UK. But gin is one of the 200 grocery items that is tracked in the basket of goods, index in the UK as a staple shopping item. So we're talking about my home country being pretty solid on their consumption of gin in the first place, let alone to increase that by 40%. I mean, it's kind of taking it back to the gin craze a little bit, isn't it?
It's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive effort.
They did us proud. Cheers.
Yeah. So is that why?
Being
a POM, is that why you're into gin? Is it genetic?
100% it is. It's literally in my bloodstream. Always, except when I'm at work, if anybody's watching. And
even then, you've got it around you, so
there's at least a whiff of it about the place, look, it is. I mean, I grew up. My job at family dinners was the second my granddad walked through the door. If he reached the lounge room through the front hallway without having a really stiff gin and tonic in his hand, I was a failure as a grandchild and as a son as well, because my dad hadn't taught me well enough. It's a staple, always was. My mum really enjoyed her gin and tonics as well. I hated it as a teenager. The bitterness of the tonic. The reasons that a lot of people still don't like gin and tonic, or at least a traditional gin and tonic, they were not particularly appealing things to a teenager in a lot of instances. If we were buying anything, it was terrible cider in 2-liter bottles, White Lightning and 2020 and those sorts of things. But no, it was the drink. It was always a pre-dinner drink, oftentimes a post-dinner drink, and I got the taste for it in my early 20s, late teens. But a traditional, we would have had Gordon's and Schweppes. That's what a gin and tonic was. Pretty rare even to find Tanqueray around the place, but we would have, and the occasional bottle of Bombay. But no, it was Gordon's and tonic. Gordon's was it, right? That was it. So my business partner and I are both English, and that's how this all came about. We were literally drinking gin and tonics at a barbecue one night at his place, and we started to observe what was happening here. We seen, more importantly, what was going on back home in the UK. By that point, Hendrix had changed everything with the cucumber slice. Sipsmith were really quick along behind, and probably changed it as much as anybody did. Certainly the craft scene, I think. Hendrix kind of dominated that change in the premium mainstream market, and then Sipsmith kind of came along and created the conditions in a lot of instances for the craft scene, and we could see it happening. We knew there was a couple of distilleries here in Australia, didn't know how many even at that time, but we kind of went, well, how do we start a business that the problem here will be people will be confronted with all of these choices, but it's not going to be a cheap product. It's going to be a premium product. How do they know which ones to drink? For the people who don't have the time to do the research, go to the distillery, meet people, talk about it, sample it. You know, there were no gin shows then. There was nothing like the things you've got now.
No gin palooza.
No gin paloozas, you know. And so it was, well, how do we create a business that we can become a trusted source of, here's the gin we think you can try. We can kind of make a judgment on the quality of the product. And that wasn't an issue in those early days. If you look at the distilleries that were around then, those 20 or so distilleries, they're still and always have been making some of the best gin in the country. So, you know, that was less of a challenge for us in the early days. And yeah, you know, we kind of took the position of, here, we'll help do the research for you. We'll drink for you, and you know, we'll drink the 10 bottles for you and select the one that you're going to get to drink this month. And it's been a fun ride.
Tough
work.
It's been a struggle, but I've got up and done it, you know, regularly ever since.
Well, look, we appreciate the effort and commitment that you've put in.
Thank you. I've been waiting for that affirmation for a number of years, so it's great to have it here.
Look, I apologize that I'm the first to provide it to you, because I think it is a valuable service that you are doing.
I agree. Not enough other people do agree, but I agree. I fully support my.
You know what?
If I end up with one member at Gin Lane, it will be enough for me to keep going out and drinking gin every day. So it's all good.
So, how many of the 400 odd distilleries in Australia have you now sampled, do you think?
Nowhere close. It would be in the hundreds, but you know, there was a time when I knew just about every single distillery, the distillers, the owners. They knew us personally. That's just not. It became impossible within a matter of probably a few years. So there's probably people out there in the industry who just haven't heard of me or us and what we do, and that's kind of nice. It's nice to introduce myself to people fresh all the time. You know, it's nice to get the reaction from a distiller when I call them and let them know that you know, we've come across their gin, we're interested in it, and would like to take it to our members. And you know, you can kind of hear the surprise sometimes. But ultimately, that's what I'm typically doing. You know, the distilleries that people already know about, for better or worse, I tend to avoid because I figure people will have found those out in other ways. Those distilleries probably don't need our help in that respect as well. So it's nice to and you know, the Palooza a couple of weeks ago, I came across one of the best gins I've had in the 7 years we've been doing this, and it was like, it's such a pleasure when it happens, because I drink so many different gins that, you know, it's great to just be surprised sometimes and go, oh my god, that is fucking amazing, you know. And
all right, well, you're gonna have to tell us who that was.
I'm happy to. So Nort Distillery down in Victoria, in Eltham, suburban Melbourne. I have had their gins for their earlier gins in their range already, but they had a under the table sample of a as yet unreleased dry gin at the Gin Palooza the other week, and was lucky enough to have already met Chris. He knew what I did, and he gave me a sample of it, and it blew me away. Absolutely one of the best dry gins being made in the country. And as a bit of a traditionalist, which I can't help being as an Englishman, it's stunningly, staggeringly good. So if you're looking for a new martini gin and you haven't tried it yet, I can't give it high enough praise, honestly. It's really fantastic stuff.
Right. So I've just whacked up on the screen now, nortgin.com.au. So that I'm just looking, they've got 3 on their website. The Australian Dry. Cheers, if that was a decent pour I gave myself. I'm already feeling it. The Australian Dry Sangiovese gin as well. Sounds interesting. And they're overproof.
And so that's how new this gin is. I've
Not even available yet
until recently as well. I know they have released it, so I'm not letting any cats out of the bag here. We've sent it out to our members as our gin of the month in our most recent month.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say it's probably stock levels right now that they're not selling it there, because I know they went out to their subscriber base first as well and that sort of stuff. So, but if I can predict awards for a gin, if they choose to enter them, I can guarantee that gin's going to be looking like Usain Bolt by the end of the next 2 years.
Wow.
Medals.
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 Big props right there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, looking at their website and their Australian Dry, touches on something that we briefly spoke about before we went live, which is Australian botanicals, and in particular wattle seed.
Yep.
So there's every Australian distiller says we only use Australian botanicals, obviously, except for the juniper.
Yep.
Does that make it difficult to stand out amongst the crowd, do you think, and use those botanicals that everyone else is using as well? Use them better or differently, or in different? How do you see the Australian botanical market progressing with all these distilleries using the same ingredient?
Yeah, it's a great question. In my mind, the only thing that makes it hard for anybody to stand out is whether they've put the time and research into bringing out their product. There is a very consistent theme that comes across from what I'm doing with distilleries, that the very best gins that are out there have taken a lot of time to pull together. You can have there are distillers who to mention somebody else who's an absolute legend, Philip from Distillery Botanica. Being a botanist by trade, he has a phenomenal understanding of botanicals. It's what he knows, but I think even Philip will tell you that. And I remember when he released his first namesake gin, the Moors gin. I had that gin the first time. I probably had it several other times over consecutive months, if not the first couple of years of Gin Lane, and it was changing each time. He was still refining it. Now, and some people will do that. They'll release a product that's amazing, and it was a great gin, and also probably the best value gin in Australia for the longest time, and is still right up there. I think Moors used to go for about $65 a bottle, and I told anybody who would listen that you're crazy not to have a bottle of this on the shelf at that price all the time. But he did work on it, and he did keep developing it. And Chris from Nort will tell you that dry gin, the reason a lot of distilleries, if they're going to release a gin first, if they're ever going to have a dry or a classic dry gin in the range, they'll try and release it fairly early on, because it's kind of your benchmark gin, I'm not sure if this is getting some sort of
that's probably my cricket.
Some feedback. Okay, that's cool. I just
there's a cricket over there, and
loud.
He's fucking loud, and I swear to God, he only starts chirping on a Thursday fucking night.
He wants to be part of the show.
He's obviously sozzled. I don't know where he's getting it from, because my bottles are sealed. But he's so fucking loud. So, and I haven't yet figured out how to cut him out, but I will.
That's amazing. I guess not to belabor the point too much, but it's time in research and development, I think, is what makes a truly outstanding gin, because you can have the botanicals that you want to work with, and you can have a flavor profile that you're heading towards. But, there's plenty of distillers who will talk you through the process where, they had, say, 7 or 8, 10 botanicals, whatever it is that they wanted to work with. They're like, actually, these work together pretty well. They do a run. Unless there's somebody out there who does magically produce a gin just like that, the story that I hear time and time again is of the distiller who goes, that's pretty good, but now I'm going to take this botanical out and I'm going to rerun that. What happens? I'm going to put that one back in. I'm going to take the next one out. What happens? Are there any significant changes? Because all of these botanicals, the way they work together, there's science and then there's art. Both, I think, combined in it is what it kind of comes down to for me. But unless you've gone through that, and I have heard of distilleries who've gone through in the tens, if not hundreds, of runs to refine their recipe. It's that,
Well, as we were 2 weeks ago talking to Stuart from Little Juniper, now he was his distillery was a COVID baby, really. He ended up accelerating his timeline to market, and he took the approach of using vacuum distillation to distill, what do you say, 300 odd botanicals,
something like that,
individually.
Individually, 300 odd botanicals, just to see what they did. And he said he even did a Mars bar, which I don't understand how you would distill a Mars bar, but apparently you can.
I don't think he's doing it again, though, in any hurry.
It's typically, is he Scottish? It's typically the Scottish who have taken Mars bars to every length that they possibly can, including deep frying.
I mean, look, a deep fried Mars bar is a thing of beauty. I won't lie, and I won't deny it. So
Kyle at Finders is one of the people who said this to me in more recent times, and you can go to Finders and Kyle's got every bottle of every single botanical that he's ever distilled, and he's got those, and that's how he started to kind of combine the botanicals that he wanted to have in a mix. But then he did exactly that. He pulled every single botanical out to see what impact it did. And if it coming out meant that the gin didn't change, he actually got rid of it. Some of the best recipes, and Nort's Classic Dry is a great example. A great classic dry gin does not require a huge botanical mix. There's a point at which I think you can be having botanicals that aren't. And again, I'm not a distiller here, so I don't make any judgments on the people who have multiple botanicals, but there are some fantastic gins out there that have very simple recipes. It's in the words of the castle, it's what you do to it, right? It is what I think sets some distillers apart from others, and some gins apart from others.
I think the largest botanical list that I've seen would be the Botanist. I think they've got 31 or something different botanicals in there, and there you go, Stuart.
Monkey 47.
He's seen the good. There you go.
Just keeping on it.
He's seen our plug.
Yeah, you didn't give yourself away by distilling Mars bars or anything, Stuart, but yeah, you gave yourself away. I'll look forward to your thoughts on deep fried Mars bars, because I guarantee he's had one.
He probably has one for breakfast.
Breakfast of champions in Scotland.
That was a short black and a shot of whiskey. Couldn't beat it.
Yeah.
So the Botanist has got about 31 botanicals in there.
Yeah. And Monkey 47. The 47 is in reference to the number of botanicals.
To the number of botanicals.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who could actually pick those, do you think?
I don't think so, honestly.
Is it botanical? Is it botanicals for the sake of botanicals at that point?
Monkey 47 won't say that, and I wouldn't say that either, given their size. No, I look. I think there's always the difference between does a botanical give you something overt?
Mm-hmm.
I'll compare those again. So Kyle uses wattle seed in his Finders Australian dry gin. That's a hero gin with wattle seed. If Kyle hadn't told me that wattle seed was in his gin, I would have struggled to know that it was in there. And I love the botanical. Once I know that it's in there, then I can kind of see, okay, I can see what part this botanical is playing in this. But the way he's used it and the way it's used here is so wildly different that, in his, it's the whole botanical mix is so perfectly blended, I think, that nothing stands out. They just all play together phenomenally. And that's why I love this spirit. Honestly, it's the differences and the difference in combination. So I guess to go back to what you asked originally is it hard to stand out? I can line you up 100 Australian gins that use lemon myrtle, and it's not hard to stand out because people use it so differently. It's a very forward botanical in a number, and in some it's just this very subtle supporting citrus note. I think there was some jokes around the use of lemon myrtle, but it's a fantastic botanical when it's used well. It's a native citrus note that is great, and it can be overdone, and there's maybe a few gins out there where lemon myrtle's a bit overdone in them. But I remember having it for the first time in funnily enough, Phil's Moore's gin. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. I'm sure he did use lemon myrtle as one of his botanicals there, and it was fantastic. It was a revelation at the time.
Grows in his garden.
Well, I think that's the other common thing that a lot of Australian producers have is they grow their own botanicals because you can go out, pick it, chuck it in the basket, and off you go. I've got a little gin history quiz question for you.
Hit me.
I'll open this up to the wider audience as well. What is how did gin come about? Or sorry, more specifically, a gin and tonic come about? What's its origin story?
Gin and tonic specifically?
Yeah.
So, look, all of these things, there's variations on any of these stories, but essentially it is that, so in the British military, the enlisted men in the Navy, which was the bulk of the British military at the time, like that's why Britain had such a strong Navy.
I don't think they had an air force at that point.
No, there was only there was Army and there was Navy, but the Navy was the only military force that was the King's or Queen's, in some instances, force. The Army side of things was generally private forces traditionally, and lords and whatever, and they all kind of came together in an army and tromped off to France more often than not, which as a good Englishman I fully applauded at times. But
don't worry, so, Australia, we've got our history with the French recently. Let's not go into that though.
All comes back to the Navy, right? Submarines now. So in the days of empire, not good days, but the British clearly suffered a lot from malaria in the tropical parts of the world, most often India. And so enlisted men in the Navy drank rum. They had a daily rum ration, which was staggering, by the way. It was half a pint when it was first brought in of Navy strength rum per day. And the rum ration, I think it was New Zealand, maybe, was the last Commonwealth country to actually get rid of the rum ration, and it was in the 70s, I think, like 71 or something. So it was still going comparatively recently. But so
Shortly after that, they got rid of their navy.
Yeah, exactly. But officers drank gin, and it's why Plymouth and Liverpool and the major ports in the UK, but Plymouth particularly, they were the only places that gin was typically supplied to the Navy, but that's what the officers were drinking. Mm-hmm. So there was two things. Obviously, on ships they suffered from scurvy, so they needed citrus. And so citrus was something that they tried to take, and cordial, lime cordial, which if you're English or have been there much, you'll know how close that is to our hearts. Was kind of a way of preserving the citrus for as long as possible. And then they discovered that quinine, the bark, had anti-malarial properties. As I've said many times before, the problem with quinine is it tastes like shit. So it's the most horrible, bitter thing going. So they'd mix some sugar, some of the lime cordial, and whatever else into something that was palatable, that they could actually consume the quinine. And of course, the officers were like, "Well, jolly good show, old chap. We've got some gin here too. Why don't we, make it alcoholic as well?" And that's where gin and tonics came from.
There you go.
Now, I wasn't there, and I can't say that the accent was spot on, and that
You've probably done better than I would have, though. And William chimed in with malaria, and yes,
yeah.
Well done, Bill.
That is the general gist of where it came from, or the origins.
That said, there is one thing I will add to this.
Yeah?
Gin and tonic has been scientifically proven to work. There is, I'm trying to remember which university in the US
to work as what?
As a combination, a flavor combination.
Right. Okay. Because it's been scientifically disproven to help with malaria.
Ward off malaria. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
You just need to drink more of it.
But if you're sozzled enough on gin, and the gin then would also. There was no such thing as everything was Navy strength back then, right? That's how they determined that they weren't getting shafted on the quality of the product. Now, it's not to say that the gin was good, but it was the right strength. And so everything was Navy strength, basically, which was around that 58%, because that's what they bought it at, and that's what they transported it at in barrels to wherever they were going. So, yeah.
So I had another cool little thing that I wanted to actually while I look for it, which was David Bowie's preferred gin.
So I don't know the answer to it, but I'm going to go with maybe Bombay or Tanqueray.
Why would you guess Bombay?
Well, here, as I said earlier, there was a time where there was really only a few choices of gin.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
you had your Gordon's, your Tanqueray, your Beefeater, your
Bombay,
Bombay,
and a couple of others that were certainly there and a little smaller and that are still around. But look, Bombay. If I were to pick a pop star's gin, the blue bottle. It's a vapor infused style of gin, so the botanicals are a little bit softer than some. It just has a broader appeal, I think, for people who may not love the hardcore dry gins. That would have been my guess, but tell me, am I right or wrong?
Well, according to this little book, yes, you are right.
It fits, doesn't it? David Bowie with sitting there with a sky blue bottle, it would have, just the image matches as far as I'm concerned. It's great.
Absolutely. All right, sorry, one more. I can't help myself. One more. Who said he knows just how I like my martini? full of alcohol?
Marilyn Monroe.
This is a female actress. Oh God, it's not coming to me right now. Maybe Elizabeth Taylor.
We'll lock it in. You said Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to chime in just before I reveal the answer? You're gonna.
Yeah, so you can't leave it for more than about 5 seconds because somebody's on Google
before someone
right now.
Googles it. Yep. So nobody has got in. William says Liz. No. Homer Simpson.
Really?
There you go.
I love the guy. I like The Simpsons more and more every day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's just there's so many good gin quotes. It's existed for an age. It's got almost universal appeal. Almost. There are obviously a lot of people who don't like it, and I was one of them. I didn't like it for quite a long time. But it has certainly. We've had a Renaissance, haven't we? I think I'm going to claim that word. I don't know whether anybody else has said it, but I'm going to claim it.
You can own it while we're on this call, but
I am
Google search will find that you're probably neither the first nor the last.
I'm sure that it's been used before.
I am the Lord of the podcast, so I can say what the fuck I like.
Yeah. Well, while we're on here, it's only these 12 walls.
Only the three of us.
Yeah, it's only 3 of us. No one else is actually watching.
I have changed my gin up just for now. Do you want to know I did now?
Never. Right.
Okay.
Very nice.
Now
I've actually run out of ice, so while you talk about that, I'm going to get some ice.
Yeah, great. So this one's a little bit special, Todd, because we were fortunate. This is kind of what I do like about Gin Lane's journey and how long we've been around with the industry is, we've had opportunity with some of these distilleries that are pretty well known now, that are internationally recognized as Never Never are, as well as Four Pillars and others. But back when Never Never were still developing some of their gins in early days, Southern Strength, which has got to get this in the camera there, which has gone on to be, I think, one of their most awarded gins internationally. They released a batch, about 7 or 8 batches, I think, under this kind of experimental label, while they were refining the recipe. And again, it comes back to that theme of refinement, doesn't it? And testing. But they released a number of batches, and I was fortunate enough to meet the guys, to be introduced to this one particular batch, and I was just like, I want that for Gin Lane. And so we were able to buy as good as the entire batch. Our membership numbers matched up at the time to almost the whole bottling, and they got some really valuable feedback from our members at the time on the particular release. So we have Genius on here, which was a little tagline, and you can see it says DGL1, so it had a code for us and everything. I still have bottle 1 of this batch unopened. This is bottle 183 of 190. I also have, I think, 3 bottles of every Juniper Freak release that Never Never have done. And my understanding is the guys at Never Never don't have those around anymore either. So, but yeah, this Southern Strength has been one of my favorites for a while. 50+%. I think they've landed on about 52. This is 54%. But it's a staggeringly good gin as well. Always has been. So this is I doubt there's much of this around anyway. Maybe 1 or 2 of our members has still got it, a little bit of it lying around.
And you're sipping it. You're not mixing it.
Yeah. This, I doing what we're doing here. Give me neat gin any day. Gin and tonics are something that I'll drink when I'm out, or at a certain time. I still maybe associate gin and tonics with it's like a social thing or whatever. But the beauty of a quality craft gin is that you should be able to enjoy it neat. And I will, till the day I finish my time in this industry, be pushing people to drink their gin neat as much as possible, so that they can just really grasp the flavors. Because no matter what tonic and anything else that you add, the garnishes and whatever, they start to change that profile of the gin. You know, if you really want to understand the mouthfeel and the texture and the flavors that are in that, then you at least have to start drinking it neat, I think, and then you can go and do whatever else you want with it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are going to mix it, of course, a tonic is generally, well, a gin and tonic, of course, as we've discussed, and there's any number of classic cocktails that you can go for. But looking at tonics specifically, so there's an explosion. As we've had gin Assons, we now have I don't know what the word for tonic explosion, tonosion. I'll just make up words.
Probably explosion, yeah.
Explosion, yeah. Where
Fountain.
we've now got so many different options of tonic now. And of course, everyone has their opinion on what makes a good tonic. What makes a good tonic for you?
So I was only telling somebody this similar story the other day at the booze markets, because they were asking me about tonics with some gins that I was introducing them to. And again, I'm a bit of a traditionalist. You know, I did grow up drinking Gordon's and Schweppes. There are people my parents' age in the UK, plenty of them, probably some younger, some older, that if you gave them a craft gin and any tonic that's not Schweppes, they'd spit it out and just say this isn't gin and tonic. When they say gin and tonic, what they mean is Gordon's and Schweppes as a specific flavor mix. You know, you can underestimate the level of sugar that's been in Schweppes traditionally, and the effect that can have on hooking people, no different to Coke or anything else, Coca-Cola that is. You know, so I am a bit of a traditionalist in that respect, which means I still like a fairly straight style of gin and tonic typically. So I will generally have two styles of tonics. I'm not going to mention brands, but I will have a tonic water that is in that traditional vein with a little bit of content, that it and again, to put myself to the side here and actually talk about distillers, Philip from Distillery Botanica said this really early on. It was at a time when dry tonics were every tonic had to be dry and you know, low sugar content and blah blah blah. And I can't remember the specific gin at the time that he gave me to try, but we were talking about what tonic would work best with it. And I think he said Schweppes. And if it wasn't Schweppes, it was another tonic that just had a slightly higher sugar content. That has its place, you know, and certain gins need to be complemented with that. If I were to throw out another pretty well-known name and their gin that I personally wouldn't have with a dry tonic, it would be something like Four Pillars Olive Leaf Gin, which is an outstanding martini gin. But if you put a dry gin with that, it's just those flavors aren't working together, in my opinion, in a great way. That's not what they created it for, to the best of my knowledge. And so I will typically have a dry tonic around, and I will have a tonic around that's got a slightly higher sugar content. You're less likely to find me with the huge variety of other tonics. Not that that's not okay, that if people really want to do that, but I don't want to think too hard sometimes about what I'm drinking.
Just want to change.
You know,
Yeah.
A gin, I should just be able to go, I want a gin and tonic, and pour that and sit on the couch and drink it, not be going, what tonic do I need to pair with this, and what garnish do I need to pair with this, and those sorts of things. So we do this as part of our business. We provide those suggestions to make it easy for people. We do the research on that, but I will generally find I can just easily reach for a gin and decide whether it's a dry or a sweeter tonic that's going to suit it if I'm having a gin and tonic, you know.
And then there's the rise of all the other tonic alternatives, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
Other mixes that are sort of coming in to try and challenge the traditional tonic market. For me, I mean, the flavors of them can be fantastic on their own, but are they going to then complement or hide the gin itself?
That's probably my biggest concern. Is I want people to like gin because they like gin, you know,
not the mix.
I hear this a lot. I can only drink this if I drink it with this. And when they say what this is, it's something that completely dominates the gin and hides all aspects of it. You know, I have no issue, and I encourage it actually, and I drink them quite a lot myself, a gin and ginger beer. But if I'm doing that, it's with a Navy strength gin that stands up pretty well to the ginger beer. It's a craft ginger beer, not a very sugary ginger beer. It's got some spice to it that's complementing it, you know, those kinds of things. And I do worry that sometimes that people buy into the idea of gin without actually really liking gin. So they will find any way they can to make it palatable, which that's great for the industry. You know, that helps all of our distillers sell their booze.
They're spending money. They can drink it how they like.
I will support that bit until the end of time. But you know, if it comes to people tell I have some people tell me they like gin, and I know they don't like gin. I'm like, you know what?
It's an interesting thing when you
like.
It's an interesting thing when you're at the cellar door.
Yeah,
and you're trying to give someone a sample of gin.
Yep.
So you pour out a little bit of gin neat, and they go, I've never drunk gin neat. So and we always go, well, we're here to show you what our gin tastes like, not what the tonic tastes like that you're drinking your gin with.
Yeah.
And the number of people that try your gin go, oh wow, this is quite nice. Is amazing, but they've never tried it prior.
Yeah.
Just as a neat drink.
Please go.
Well, for me, it comes across as it's always with something.
Yeah.
When you have a whiskey, it's generally a whiskey on its own. If you have a vodka, well, you would have a vodka with a mixer, but some people do just have vodka on its own. But gin generally comes in a gin and tonic or a gin martini or some sort of cocktail, a mixer of some form, rather than being just on its own.
And it suffers from its history in that respect, right?
Yeah.
Gin was an awful drink at times in its history, and there's a very good reason that some of the best cocktails in the world have been built around gin. It's because gin was terrible. But even down to the predominant style of gin for most of England's history, certainly, was less what we call a London dry style now. You know, that's the predominant style. But I would say, and there'll be plenty of people who would pull me up on this, but I think, you know, sometime up until the mid 1900s, maybe between the 50s to the 70s, the style of gin moved more towards the drier London style that we now associate with gin. But what they were drinking during the gin craze and that part of London's history, Gin Lane, where our name came from, the etching, that was more an old Tom style, which was actually sweetened gin, you know. So and it was stored in wooden barrels. Not that those had a huge impact on the flavor, because they were basically very spent barrels and big barrels in all the instances. But there was that, and so the style was not this London dry that we're used to, and it was because the gin typically wasn't that great, and you had to hide some of that flavor with either a cocktail or some sugar in the gin itself.
So, coming back to what you just said a moment ago in terms of the storage of gin being in barrels, we see every now and then a few gins coming out that have been barrel aged. What are your thoughts on the barrel aging process and the outcome of that?
I have one in my my little repertoire tonight.
Oh, that one's rubbish.
One of my favorites.
Wash your mouth out.
This is probably where my interest in all spirits starts to come in, and I'm a big whiskey drinker too. I love rum. I like a lot of spirits. I enjoy brandy. So I have thoughts on it for sure. A bad barrel aged gin is one where somebody has just taken their gin and just taken any barrel and just barrel aged the gin, just for the sake of barrel aging the gin, and haven't approached it from probably more the whiskey maker's perspective, which is, I need to understand what impact this wood is going to have on my product, on my spirit. Like, what's the wood bringing? What's it going to do to it? Now, gin distillers have all the potential to be great at this, because, in my mind, and some of these distillers can shoot me down on this one for sure, but the barrel aging needs to be treated like another botanical. What is it doing to the flavor mix? What is it doing to my gin? What's it softening? What's it adding? All of these sorts of things. And I can definitely put two barrel-aged gins out there that I do think are outstanding and have quite different approaches to the same thing, but I like them equally. And that is, the Carew Crafty collab here. What has happened here is fantastic, which is Ali, as a distiller, has taken it from the perspective of, she knows the whiskey barrel and what that's bringing, and she's created a gin recipe that will sit in that and age and create a melded product that just works amazingly for me. The other example is Farmer's Wife's. It's not a collab. They have taken a barrel from Blackgate and a peated barrel, she's used Kylie at Farmer's Wife has used their regular autumn dry gin, but put it in that peated barrel. And so what she's done is gone, I know the barrel that I want to come to my, to my gin and create this barrel aged gin. And so that's their winter gin, and it's get your hands on one. I only just got the email this week of their latest release of winter gin, and I'll have my order in. It sells out in like a hot minute. But it's fantastic. And so for me, it's that beauty of, wow, okay, you get this peated smokiness, and I of course I love everything that Blackgate do as well. So these approaches are where I really love to see barrel aged gin going. Unfortunately, I have had quite a number where I think it's been just we're barrel aging our products for the sake of it. And I've got no issue with the experimentation, but not all of those products perhaps need to be released to market, because the barrel can cut across the gin. If you haven't kind of worked out how these flavors are going to meld, you've got this barrel doing one thing and this quite complex botanical mix of the gin doing another thing, and it doesn't always work. Those are two great examples, and there are others. I recognize that in the position of what I do, when I mention some people, I will always be forgetting others or not being able to mention all of the others. But yeah, those are at least two great examples of where it's being done well, I think.
I guess that there's not as many examples of it, so being able to pick out two that are fantastic is pretty damn good as well.
Well, 40 Spotted back in the day, they had a winter gin that I want to say we selected that in our first, if it wasn't our first year, it was certainly in our second year, but I think it was our first as a winter gin, and they were barrel aging. But again, you had somebody there at the time who was a whiskey distiller and understood how those flavors might be able to come together. And it's been a while since I've picked up a bottle of 40 Spotted's winter, but I still have a bottle sitting on my shelf from the early days that I love to dig into when we hit winter time. It's barrel aged gins are a great thing through winter, I think, for sure. Gin old fashioned.
Yep.
Always a barrel aged gin if I can find a good one. Yeah.
Right. We're gonna have to hit you up for your best cocktail recipes as well. That we might post later on, because that could be a never-ending list.
It's a long list, but again, it's a long list, but also not a long list, because it's like a martini. You can say you love a martini, but that martini will change every time based on the quality and the style of the gin that you're putting in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so we've spoken a little bit, an hour or about gin. We've touched a little bit on Gin Lane, and obviously people can take advantage of your wealth of gin knowledge through a Gin Lane subscription available through the website. Whoop, wrong one. That one.
Yeah, nice work.
That one. There it is. Yep. Professional, smooth. Downginlane.com.au. Get on there. But you've got another project as well.
Yeah.
Craft Booze Market. How'd that come about?
So, working closely with craft distillers like I had, I ended up hearing some of the same things from a lot of them about how difficult it could be to get out to meet customers in the right environment, and in an environment where they actually made good money from it, and perhaps that it didn't always cost a lot of marketing dollars to do. Craft distilleries the one thing that always surprises me is how many distilleries there are based on how expensive it is to start a distillery.
Yeah.
And we've been asked, I don't know how many times, when, why, if we would start a distillery, because of my obvious interest in the industry. And the biggest props or applause that I can give to this industry is that the more time I have spent around it, the less interested I am in being a distiller and starting a distillery. It's a phenomenal enterprise that these people and you guys sort of engage in. It's expensive. A lot of times people have put their life savings on the line. They've followed a passion. They've given up careers, whatever else to do this thing. And in every instance, there's an insane amount of risk that people have taken and plowed a lot of money into. So I have nothing but huge respect for the industry from that perspective. And therefore, I've kind of looked at it as, what can I do to fill any gap that I might be able to do that doesn't involve actually producing. So Gin Lane has been a way for distillers to introduce their product to a membership across the country. The event side came down to two things. One was what I'd been hearing from distillers, and the other actually was my wife's a chocolate manufacturer. And I had been involved with her growth in that from a sales perspective. We would go to a specialty market once a month, a very successful market, and it enabled her to grow her business really well. And it became, anybody who's done markets knows they do this one typically. You know, one month you can have just the most fantastic market or week or whatever, how often you're going to them, and the next nobody turns up and you're standing there with your hands in your pockets on some freezing day. Whereas this market, month in and month out, was bankable. That, you know, there was a level that we knew we would reach at every single market, and it was only a matter of, is it a good market or is it a great market? It was never a shit market. And I just thought, well, why can there not be a specialty market for this product? The other thing that people were saying a lot, and I saw this in trying to take gins to markets for other people, was the traditional market operators, and I'm sure there's some head nodding out there as I say this in the Facebook sphere, but you go to your market and they go, well, we've already got a distiller here at the market, you know, your local farmers market or organic market or whatever else. We've already got a distiller, or at that's at worst. You know, at best it was, well, we have a whiskey distiller and we have a gin distiller and we don't need any more because we've already got one. Whereas any of us who are in the industry who sit there with a shelf like yours behind you, Luke, know that you can have 10 gin distillers at the same thing and you will be able to sell to different people for your product, because not everybody likes everything. Shock horror. So I kind of wanted to prove some of those those operators wrong, because I approached a couple of them in Sydney to go, I could bring you distillers to your market, and I can bring you, let's say, 10 on a monthly basis. You have a special, you know, addition to your market once a month, and we'll bring more people to your market, and we'll benefit from the traditional traffic that you have as well, of course. And they were not interested. So I thought, okay, the original concept was for a craft spirits market, and there's quite a lot of people that I talked to about that. Then it really evolved quite quickly, because the other thing that I find to be a shame in the industry and the way events are often run in it is, you've got gin shows, you've got whiskey shows, you've got gabs and beer festivals and beer shows. But where's the thing where all of them come together? You know, in my circle of friends, I've got friends who will not touch gin. I've got friends who will not touch whiskey. I've got friends who will not touch wine. Every single one of my friends drinks. But
otherwise they wouldn't be friends.
Yeah, I'm kind of the only true alcoholic of the lot, that I drink every single one of those things. But, you know, the majority of people, they've got their preferences. So I thought, well, why not have this market environment it's casual, it's you know, it's face to face, the dogs can be there. You know, we host the market in the inner west of Sydney. If you don't allow dogs in, you'll be run out of the place in, you know, 2 seconds, as you should. So, you know, it's those kinds of things, and it was just, there's got to be an opportunity here. And it's not to say that any of the events that have been being done up until this point or are being done aren't right. I think there was a gap that for another one, and that's unusual. Often in the event space, that there's something that's not being done that can fill a hole. We're not taking away from anybody else. We don't think they're taking away from us, but we can have beer, wine, spirit, cider, non-alcs, and some specialty food products that are booze based. You know, we've had boozy donuts, boozy chocolate. I'll leave you to make the obvious link to how that came about. Even when I'm eating, I'm drinking, you know. So,
gee, dinner at your house must suck.
Well, you know, it's my final thing for the night. Some gin chocolate. But yeah, so, you know, the only downside to the booze market was in the history of bad business timings. I launched the booze market originally at Moore Park in Sydney with 45 odd stalls over at EQ next to the cricket ground.
Fantastic market.
Yeah, look, it was great. It was great fun. It was great to see it get off the ground. And then I think like a week later, the bushfires hit that year. So our next market we weren't able to do because of those, because, you know, craft distillers and craft producers are often, there are the urban ones, but there's plenty that are based in regional areas that tend to get hit the worst by these things. Then the floods followed that. That was another market canned. So the third market that we were due to hold was going full steam ahead until it was cancelled a week out, not by us, but by the government, because major events were cancelled with COVID. And that was it. Booze markets were done for 2 years. But I always wanted to bring it back. It was too much. It was too much fun, too good an idea. So we're back with smaller markets. That we have a monthly one in Marrickville. We are not at the 45 stalls size because I think it's better to be smaller and more nimble and build this up a little bit slower instead of trying to go the whole hog. The main thing that I try and do as an organizer is that the ratio of customers to stall holders means that all of the stall holders have a strongly profitable day. So, you know, I get people asking me how many customers are turning up to the markets often, and when I give them the number, they kind of go, "Oh, hang on," because they've got the 10 or 20,000 in their head of a festival. But I ask them to look at the actual profit that they make, because that's my yardstick. It's a shopping exercise. It's not a tasting, drinking exercise. So people sample to buy, and it's takeaway, not I've paid a ticket price to be here, and there's this drinking included as part of it. It's different in that respect. It is that farmer's market for booze, you know, or organic market for booze. It's come and buy, you know, and there's no barrier to entry. There's no price to be there as a customer. So you come and you know, I think our customers treat it with that level of respect. You know, we don't have people falling down drunk walking out because they've tasted everything they possibly can. They try and they talk to the producers and they go away. And probably the most exciting thing for me is to watch people, because we do track this in sales. What are you coming to the markets for? Are you coming for beer? Are you coming for spirits or wine or cider or whatever? And so we know what people are coming for, but you watch people walking out with a little bit of everything, you know, and they're spending money. That I think was the question about COVID, wasn't it? It was, what's people's disposable income? You know, do they have the money to support the craft industry? I would say our experience suggests, absolutely they do. You know, they really do. There's plenty of people still with plenty of money. Don't worry about that.
And the right priorities when they don't. Being our alcohol. Absolutely. We've had a little comment come in from Black Rabbit Distillery. How do you feel about receiving unsolicited gin samples in the mail? I don't mind. I can answer that. I don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy for anyone to send me as many unsolicited samples or full bottles as you like. I'll just put that out there. But
we'll give you Todd and Luke's PO box. But look, yes, they don't need to be unsolicited. I really welcome contact from any Australian distillery. The one thing that I will always say about what we do, and you know, certainly with Gin Lane, I have 12 opportunities a year. You know, and there's, as I think Mick or Mel said earlier, you know, 800 or more gins out there. You know, you can kind of do the numbers on our opportunity to support the industry now in that respect. I think our position naturally is not as strong as it was back then, you know, in that I can't help everybody when there's plenty of people that I would love to. What I am always happy to do, I think the nature of any industry is somebody reaches out, they send a product. One thing I say to everybody who sends me product is the odds are not in your favor of me being able to send your product out for various reasons. It's the number of slots that I have available, but it's also I have not been able to send some of the best gins in the country out to our members because they just didn't land at the right time for us. You know, I try and tell a story through the year. Lighter, easier drinking summer gins in summer, heavier, spicier, fuller bodied, wintry gins through winter, and kind of tell that story through the year so that people aren't sitting there going, hang on, I want to be sitting out on a, you know, by the water with a tall gin and tonic, but it's, you know, 16, 17 degrees outside, or it's snowing, or it's raining, or wherever you are in the country. So, you know, there's that. And then there's, I try not to send the same sort of gins. Yeah, I will come to that bit in a second, Black Rabbit. Thank you, because it's where I'm certainly leading to. The one thing that I will always be happy to do is it's hard, I think, for some people to receive a product that they don't feel is quite right for them, and go back and tell that distiller or producer that that's the case. It's a hard message sometimes to send back. I'd like to think I'm pretty comfortable with doing that, because having sold products myself, the worst thing is not getting anything back. You know, the explanation of why your product wasn't right is worth far more than, you know, radio silence and never hearing back, you know, from somebody. So I'm not always great at this, but I due to being busy at times, but I do my best that if somebody sends me something, and if it is specifically with the view towards what do you think of my product, I will give you an honest opinion on that. I am not a distiller. So the one thing I don't ever tell people I can help them with is how to improve their product. I can tell them why I think it could be improved. You know, is your product unbalanced? Is there a flavor here that's not quite working? Anything like that. I can analyze a product and say why I think it could be better, but I'm not in a position to tell any distiller how to improve that. That's what makes distillers, and what makes me just a mouthy drinker, I guess. I don't believe that's my place, and I don't choose to tell people how to do their job. I can tell them why I think their product may not land with customers in the way that they were maybe hoping, based on my experience. But I always put that caveat that it's only my experience, and as plenty of people have told me over the years when I've been slightly critical of their product, and they tell me, well, this is our best-selling product. I'm like, then don't listen to me. What do I know? You know, if you're selling your product successfully to a lot of people, it doesn't matter what I think. I can only tell you from my perspective with my particular business. So for whatever that's worth, I'm happy to offer that opinion. But I encourage everybody to judge that for what it's worth.
Good advice.
Helpful. I mean, look, it's a hard job. Someone's got to do it.
I still enjoy it on all early drinkers. Yeah. Well, I would think so. Here's my only advice to a distiller. If you launched your product because your friends told you it was great, and that's the only people who've told you it was great, take another look. I've offered, here is one offer I will make, and I've offered this to a lot of distillers, and so few take me up on the offer. If you send me samples, mini samples of your product to put in the boxes to my customers with a questionnaire that is designed to get the right feedback on your product for its commercial appeal, I will do that. And there are businesses that charge you to do that. I will do that for free. It's a nice little thing to send out to my members. But proper impartial customer feedback, I think, is really important. I do think it's why awards are good when they give you, a rating or a grade. I know there's a lot of awards, and I'm a judge on some awards. I know there's a lot of awards where you will only get the rating, but I've always said, and I think it kind of goes without saying, if you enter an award where you just get a rating, you don't get feedback. Bearing in mind these awards, we're judging, hundreds of gins between us across a small period of time. Giving lengthy feedback is difficult at the best of times. But I've always said to anybody, if you don't hit a medal for any reason, or you didn't hit the medal that you think you should have, you can reach out to me and I will give you. It's blind when I taste it, but if you want to send it to me, I will give you why I think it was probably judged down. And I've had this conversation with a number of distilleries, because I have a good understanding of why something may not have hit the mark, and that I'm happy to offer if that helps people improve their product. But I would just do the testing. And, the face-to-face, people aren't going to tell you to your face that they don't like your product. It just does not happen. And your friends and your mum and your dad and your cousin and everybody.
They will always be your biggest supporters, no matter what you do and how shit it is. That's why that's why all my kids' paintings are hanging up on the fridge.
100%. And you upgrade your fridge year on year just to put more up there. Because that's less painful than telling your kid that their artwork sucks and it would never, it's even Steve, down the road, he does better paintings, but we
don't give up your day job, kid.
But that's our job, isn't it? Is to be our friends and family's biggest supporters, and but there's a commercial aspect to this that I think it's important to get an unbiased view, and seek that out. Seek it out.
And your offer there to include a sample with a questionnaire into a box to all your subscribers, that's a huge offer. I
would like to think so. It comes at a cost. It comes at a cost to the distiller. I recognize that.
Of course,
I recognize that.
But the feedback from there would be broad and hope. You're going out to people who love gin. People who don't love gin are not going to get a gin subscription. So
our membership is not the biggest, but it is full of dedicated Australian gin drinkers, and I think that carries some weight in terms of what they can offer to a distiller for sure. But the blind aspect is just so critical. If you have never blind tasted your product, then I worry that you may not be getting accurate feedback on your product.
Use the scientific method, people. Test, retest, blind test. Don't make assumptions.
For sure.
Be prepared to change your assumptions. I thought about it, and I'm going to have to just wedge in a little spot for our sponsors, because otherwise I'll completely forget. So I'm just going to flash this up. Regular watchers, listeners will have heard us talk about how half of our sponsors don't want to hear from you. Burns Welding and Fabrication, of course, Burnsy, massively popular steel builder, high demand, awesome product. They say, don't call us, we'll call you. Look, just call them anyway. The worst they can do is say, yeah, it'll be a 3-year wait. But, I mean, look.
Something like that.
You never know. Yeah. I mean, that's not that far away, really. If you
give you time to get your licenses in place.
Yeah, actually learn how to distill.
Yeah,
that'd be a good thing to do before you get a massive still. Yeah. We've got Wyandotte Cooperage, Andrew Young, brilliant barrel maker, lovely bloke, awesome team, brilliant product. Crafty's got heaps of them in his barrel store. It was a Wyan. Was it a wine barrel that you did use with Bumblebee?
No.
That would have been a great tie-in. Jesus shit, let me down there.
What I will say is Andrew is as passionate about barrels and wood as anybody is about the spirit that they put into them. He has a real passion for it. It's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. And to that matter as well. To that matter, Transwood, Master Coopers as well. Between them, what these guys don't know about wood isn't worth knowing. Some good wood knowledge. Barrel Brokers, Robbie, he knows the good wood as well. If you're looking for a barrel, any kind of barrel, he'll find the specialty barrel of your dreams. And then you've got to figure out what to do with it. We've got Saberglass. Sorry, Todd?
Put some great spirit in it and age it. That's what you do.
Yeah. Yes. Timing is everything, though. You've got to use it straight away, don't you?
Very much so.
Be quick. Be decisive. Don't faff about.
No.
Saberglass, bottles, glass, all things glass. I don't have a story about Saberglass yet. I'm going to have to really work on that. It's a pretty shitty plug, isn't it? Same as CCL. I mean, they do labels and shit, stuff, and printing visual things. Actually, that's something I want to come back to.
I'm happy to help you out on that score if you like.
Please do. Please do.
Shelf appeal is everything. I've had the pleasure of judging some design awards when it comes to gin as well, and we actually did that over at CCL. Their labels are amazing, and Saberglass's bottles are fantastic. So, the package, that you can have the best product in the world, but if it's not in the right packaging, it can be hard. The fortunate thing about our business is we're sending bottles to our members, in a different sense. It's not there on a shelf. It's not. Yeah. That's not required. So I can send out products that maybe don't have the shelf appeal if I think the product's good enough and it still gets into our members' hands. But that's not 99.9% of retail, is it? It's got to have the shelf appeal, and those two companies are two of the best in the biz.
So really,
a shelf full of bottles. Which one do you get? The bright shiny one.
The one that's not broken.
One that's not broken, or full of flowers, apparently.
Yeah, I did buy a bottle just because it had flowers on it. I will show that in a moment. And of course, water. Wild Walgan, natural spring water. They have water. And if you need water, get it from Wild Walgan. That is where Craftworks get all their water from.
Yeah.
So can't beat it. That's a good drop. I think that's all of them for now. So, yeah, talking about labels and stuff. Oh, shit, now I've turned the light off. So, I was at Uncle Dan's, and I was looking at
shelves of bottles,
the shelves of bottles going, I'm here to buy something. I'm not sure what I want to buy. I'm just going to see what grabs me. And what ended up grabbing me was a bottle. So can you tell just by that who that is?
Yes, the name is not coming to me right this second, but I absolutely know the bottle. Yeah.
So it's Tread Softly in Victoria. Jesus, I've got to fix that blowout of color because no one can see shit. There you go. Just zoom in if you have that ability on the bottle, that bit there. I just thought that was lovely, simple, nice bottle design. In a nice sort of kitschy bottle, old-timey style bottle with a actual cork. No, it's a rubber cork. But I thought that grabbed me enough to pick it up off the shelf and buy it because it was something a little different. At the same time, I've got no qualms in saying it. I looked at on the shelf hemp gin on the shelf, and I went, no, I'm going to buy that pretty bottle. That because I had an impression in my mind and a stigma over the hemp, which I tell you what, I fucking love that gin. It's a great gin. And I went for the bottle instead. Arguably, I think I like the one that I didn't go for better. So I don't quite know what point I'm trying to get across, but the bottle certainly makes a difference. And I wouldn't have bought that gin if I hadn't have seen that bottle sitting on the shelf. It was actually turned around, the row of them, just with the flowers. You couldn't even see the label. But I bought that purely based on the label when I could have bought that had I have known what the flavor was going to be.
If this helps anybody, there are design awards. There are bottle design awards. If you're a distiller looking to determine what needs to be on your bottle, typically I think most design awards will post some of their criteria. I can tell you who came top in the latest gin design awards that I was a part of, and that was Prohibition from South Australia. Anybody who knows Prohibition's brand and bottles will probably never be surprised by that. The thing I would say is, when I looked at the lineup when we immediately began judging, I looked at a couple of bottles and I was like, well, that's a shoe-in. And this is what I love from a judging perspective. And to set your mind at ease, I didn't prejudge anything except to go, well, my immediate impression is I like that. But then we have criteria that we follow through, and we go down each of those criteria and judge the bottle against each of those. And a bottle that I looked at and I was like, well, that's a shoe-in, gets knocked out in the first round. Why? Because it didn't have any story. It didn't have the legals fully done, and they weren't blended into the design of the bottle, and the botanicals weren't listed. Yeah, so if you can pull up a picture of their navy, that's the specific bottle that won. And then you know there's things around, and I would expect anybody who's come into contact with either bottle shops or bars from a sales perspective, i.e. they don't exclusively sell through, say, their cellar door and online. Bars and what they want will be very different from bottle shops. A bar typically, and any people who work in hospo here can again shoot me down on this one, but the feedback that I hear often is screw tops versus cork. You don't want to take up too much space on the shelf. Maybe one area where Prohibition kind of breaks the mold a little bit, because that's a very wide bottle, so it takes up a lot of shelf space. And yet that bottle there, that wins pretty strongly. I said second and third place were great entrances there, but yeah, that Prohibition one, it's got the story, it's got the label behind it, even down to some of the subtleties of the coloring on the label, the blue and the white. That's their navy strength bottle. if you were to put Prohibition's whole lineup together on a shelf, you'd look at that, and if somebody said to you, pick, you're 20 feet away, pick the one that's going to be the Navy strength, you go, of course, it's blue and white. It's a no-brainer. You don't ever have to see the detail of that bottle. And it's these kind of subtleties that, so I have no experience on judging, say, whiskey design awards, but certainly from a gin perspective, I'm sure it'll be very similar. You kind of want some pointers. Pick up one of Prohibition's bottles, particularly that Navy strength, and look at it in detail, and kind of look at the little things that, when you're judging awards, it's points, and you go through the categories and you assign points, and at the end of it, you go, oh wow, that total is not what I was expecting, but you followed criteria that are set by the awards, and so if you like, the answer is right. It's not a subjective thing. There's criteria that you're judging against.
Yeah. Speaking subjectively, I was down in Tassie, and I went to the Salamanca markets, and of course, almost every Tassie distiller has a representation at the Salamanca markets. This one, Taylor and Smith Gin and Whiskey.
Yep. They
stood out to me over everybody else in terms of bottle and just shelf appeal. Seeing all of these lined up in a row on their table was just, it looked so amazing and so impressive. Now, that's going to cost them an absolute fucking fortune to do. So you're going to have your cost of sale of those is going to go up, but God, it looks good. But that's my subjective opinion, though.
Are you familiar with Moore's Gin?
Moore's Gin?
Phil at Distillery Britannica?
No.
Give me a second.
In the meantime, I'm having a 5.9s whiskey.
I have moved on to
this one.
Yeah.
Are you Furno?
I've moved on to my little treat here. What's that one, Todd?
It's Furno. It's I think they're a fairly new distillery down in Flinders Island.
Okay.
Something like that.
Cool.
Yeah, Flinders Islands. A young couple.
Crafty is certainly singing their praises. Yeah.
Crafty is?
Yep. He's a big fan. Absolutely.
I guess he knows something.
He knows a couple of people in the industry.
He's not here, so I think we can confidently say we can bag him out, right? Like, he's not here to defend himself. So.
Have you seen the show? We bag him out every fucking episode.
I did like I did like the new glasses. I was I shed a tear of laughter or 10 over that. Just fantastic. It's yeah. He looks like he's going paintballing in those things. It's really quite phenomenal.
So Ali has finally joined us, and she says, "Hey, Lindsay, the legend himself."
Ouch.
We briefly touched on cocktails, and I said that we would get your list of favorite cocktails. But yeah, what is your favorite gin cocktail?
Always a martini. Always a martini. Because I love my gin and I love it neat. So I like a dry martini. I like some variations. I like the Vesper, depending on the gin, those sorts of things. But there is no better hero cocktail for a great dry gin, I think, and some variations of classic gins. Are you going to put a nice light summer gin in a martini? No, definitely not. But like I said, Nort, Karoo, while we're talking about it, by the way, You know, not to blow anything up, Nick and Ali's proverbial, because Ali's on, but you know, we were fortunate to be introduced to Karoo before Karoo was Karoo, I think, just about. You know, Reg had put me in touch with Nick and Ali. I met them for the first time at another institution that it's a shame it's not around anymore, but Tonic Lane, in around Neutral Bay in Sydney. And you know, anybody who's met Nick, you need a chiropractor afterwards, obviously, because you spend your whole time looking up at him. And
you're not sure.
I'm not sure, but I am when I'm standing next to Nick. I'm not entirely sure how Ali does it, to be honest. I assume she keeps a step ladder around the place just to try and look him in the eye occasionally. But, you know, they are two of the hardest working people in the industry. So success that comes their way is well deserved. But the product they produced is fantastic as well. So, you know, we were fortunate to do a Karoo gin really early on in their story, and you know, as I said, they've come out with some cracker scents. So, you know, both affinity and, you know, yeah, if you want to step it up, Lightning is an absolutely insanely good Navy strain, and now I would be more inclined to be using Lightning in a. I would feel comfortable, should I say, using it in something like a Negroni, where, you know, the flavors of a Negroni can easily dominate a gin, but something like Lightning will stand up in some of those classic cocktails. And then if it wasn't so damn good for sipping, this would be a cracking gin in an old fashioned for me. Honestly, again, my tastes are simple. The cocktails that I like are the simple ones, but I also think it's what stands great mixologists or bars apart from others is there's a reason that the classics don't have a ton of ingredients, you know. Negronis, old fashions, you know, those variations on cocktails, they typically have the three things. It's the booze, it's something sweet, it's something bitter or savory, and you know, the quality is in both the booze and blending these very simple things into something that actually works. So I've got a friend that I anywhere I go in the country, if we're together traveling, and we want to go to a new bar, the first thing we ask for is an old fashioned, and that determines whether we think they're a great bar or not. I have no right to be judging people on their cocktail making. I'm not a great cocktail maker myself at all. But it's just, what questions you get asked, you know, does the person at the bar ask you, well, first of all, what booze do you want? Because you're never going to get asked that in a pub, are you? You ask for an old fashioned, they're just going to make some shit up for you most of the time. But do they ask you what spirit you want? Then do they ask you whether you want it on the sweeter side or the drier or bitter side? You know, those kinds of things. And a couple of questions. A story that I've told a few people. We did land in Melbourne at the same time one weekend, and we ate dinner at South, the Tasmanian restaurant on the South Bank. I don't know whether that's still around anymore. It's been 2 years since I've been able to be down in Melbourne, but we ate dinner there. We had quite a lot of wine, and we staggered back across the river on one bridge or another. To this day, neither of us actually really knows. And we landed in this bar where we had to go downstairs. Again, none of this is narrowing things down for you. Went to a downstairs bar in Melbourne and we asked for old fashions. The person that we asked in this bar was like, "Are you serious about your old fashioned?" And we're like, "Yep." They said, "If you're willing to wait, that person there makes the best old fashioned. They're our specialist on that." my points were just going higher and higher and higher for this bar by the second. And that was it. The whole night we just drank old fashions because they were hands down the best old fashions I've had in this country. And it explains a lot of why. I have no fucking clue what bar it was. We have been back to Melbourne since. We've eaten dinner at the same restaurant, gotten ourselves pissed, and done our best to stagger in a similar fashion back across the river and see if we somehow magically land up in the same bar. Can't find the bar. So if anybody's listening who's got any suggestions, I would love to hear them. But yeah, it's kind of great cocktails are the product themselves, and then the people who are mixing it, right?
So my question is, did the bar and the old fashioned actually exist, or were you just dreaming?
This is a true story, 100%. I have not embellished any aspects of it. I have not exaggerated any aspects of it. This was like...
I think we've all had one of those experiences, though.
This was if Disney were to make bar crawl movies. This was that movie. Yeah,
right. Or
there was some sort of there was some moment where somebody was on a magic carpet and you know, I Will Show You the World was playing behind it. It was it was dreamy.
Yeah, the stars aligned, the birds were singing, and it just magic happened that night.
100%. Yep, full moon, stars out. Yeah, it was magical.
Nice. Well, we've hit the hour 45 mark, so we might wrap it up there. Let's get the banners up. So we've got downginlane.com.au. Get on there, get a subscription. I'm sure your address and everything is on there in order for people to send their samples that they want to get feedback on.
Pop me an email. I'll give you an
email,
address.
phone call, all the rest. Yep.
Yep.
Then there's the Craft Booze Market. .com.au. Oh god, I could go some gin chocolate right now. Yeah, good. Thanks for that.
Would you like to have the gin?
Of course. Of course.
Ali,
quality ingredient. Yeah, let's just sit here watching you eat chocolate for a little while. Our viewership will go
all
up.
around my mouth, and I'm going to need a private moment with it. So
you meant to eat it, not wear it. So the Craft Booze Market.com.au to find out when it's on, where it's on, because now you've got a few different places, haven't you? You're in Marrickville and out west somewhere.
Yep. So we had Richmond this month. Richmond will most likely not be monthly. We'll dot them around, but it'll probably be maybe quarterly out in Richmond. And we're looking at a couple of other locations as well. So yeah, I would like to see markets around the country in the distant future.
Awesome. Well, I guess what we need is distillers from around the country to hit you up so you can band them together. And
breweries and wineries. So
anyone and gin, alcohol related food stuff.
Yep.
Nice. So jump on the website. All the social links are there. Follow them. Lindsay, thank you so much. It's been great.
This has been fun. We've had these sort of conversations before, but it's always a pleasure and nice to do it from the comfort of my own home, I must admit.
Yeah, whilst eating chocolate and drinking and enjoying yourself. Yeah.
And all the better for not having Crafty.
You've got a little something just there. Yeah. No, the other side. No, the other side. No, the other side.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. No, just wipe that off. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I mentioned on Facebook, we've lost 2 months worth of content on Facebooks because Facebook fucked us. Please go to the website or to YouTube and see all of our back episodes there. The website certainly has everything, plus the links to all of the different places that you can watch and listen: YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, and other places as well, or directly on the website. Go nuts. And there you go. Hi, Chris. So yeah, thank you all very much. Please like, subscribe, follow, and we will catch us all on the flip side.
Give us a good review.
Oh yeah, give us a review. That'd be wicked.
Yeah.
That would be wicked. And we do actually get some nice comments come through on Messenger, which is lovely. We've had a few people who have listened to us whilst doing cross-country drives, and I personally could not think of anything worse. But yeah, great.
Yeah, quick way to put people to sleep on a cross-country drive. Jeez.
Oh, God, yes. Listening to my voice for hours and hours. And my wife doesn't even do that.
If I'd been driving and that picture of Crafty in those glasses popped up, like, you'd be reading about me on the news the next morning. Unbelievable.
Fuck, where have I been? I've lost it now. Oh, shit.
Oh,
no. It's gone. No, it has. It's gone. I've lost it.
No.
Oh, my God. I'm going to have to find it. All right. That's my mission. Oh, no. There it is.
Oh, my God. There it is.
And on that note.
Yeah. Good luck getting to sleep
dreams,
tonight,
everyone.
everybody.
Sweet dreams.